And the messenger said to me, you marveled because of what? I will say to you the mystery of the woman and of the wild animal, the one bearing her, the one having the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The wild animal which you saw he was, and he is not, and is about to go up from the bottomless, and he goes off into destruction. And the ones reciting on the earth will be marveling, whose name has not been written on the small book of the life from foundation of the world, seeing the wild animal that he was, and he is not, and will be present. Here is the mind, the one having wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 hills where the woman sits on them. And there are 7 kings. The 5 fell, the one is, the other has not yet come, and when he might come, little him it is necessary to stay. And the wild animal which was, and is not, he himself is 8th, and he is from the 7, and he goes off into destruction. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but they receive authority as kings with the wild animal for 1 hour. These have one purpose, and they give their power and authority to the wild animal. These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, because he is Master of masters and King of kings. And the ones with him are called and select and trustful. And he says to me, the waters which you saw where the prostitute sits are peoples and crowds and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which you saw in the wild animal, these will hate the prostitute, and they will make her desolate and naked, and they will eat her flesh, and they will burn her down in fire. For the God gave into their hearts to do his purpose, and to do one purpose, and to give their kingdom to the wild animal, until the words of the God will be completed. And the woman whom you saw is the great city, the one having kingdom on the kings of the earth. After these things I saw another messenger coming down from the heaven, having great authority, and the earth was lightened from his splendor. And he shouted in a strong sound, saying, Fell Babylon the Great, and she became residence place of demons, and guard of every unclean spirit, and guard of every unclean bird, and guard of every unclean wild animal. And having been hated because all the nations have drunk from the wine of the fury of her sexual immorality, and the kings of the earth committed sexual immorality with her, and the merchants of the earth were rich from the power of her luxury. And I heard another sound from the heavens saying, Come out from her, my people, that you might not be co-partner in her sins, and that you might not receive from her blows, because her sins were joined until the heaven, and the God remembered her wrong acts. Give off to her as also she gave off, and double the doubles according to her works. In the cup in which she mixed to her double. As much as she gave herself splendor and luxuriated, such give to her torment and mourning. Because in her heart she says, I sit as queen, and I am not a widow in mourning. Ha! I might not ever see. Through this in one day will come her blows, death and mourning and famine, and in fire she will be burned down, because strong Master the God is the one having judged her. And the kings of the earth and the great ones, and those having committed sexual immorality and having luxuriated with her, will cry and will mourn over her when they might see the smoke of her burning, having stood afar through the fear of her torment, saying, Woe, woe, the great city, Babylon, the strong city, because your judgment came in 1 hour. And the merchants of the earth cry and mourn her, because no one buys her cargo no longer. Cargo of gold and silver and valuable stone and pearls and linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all citron wood and every ivory pot and every pot from wood most valuable and copper and iron and marble and cinnamon and spice and incense and perfume and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and animals and sheep and horses and chariots and bodies and souls of humans. And your fruit, the desire of the soul, went off from you, and all the sleek and the bright are destroyed from you, and no longer, not ever, will they find them. The merchants of these things, the ones being rich from her, will stand afar through the fear of her torment, crying and mourning, saying, Woe, woe, the great city, Babylon, the strong city, the one having thrown around herself linen and purple and scarlet, and having been made golden in gold and valuable stone and pearl. Because in 1 hour was desolated such riches. And every helmsman and everyone sailing on to places, and sailors, and as many as worked the sea, from afar they stood and were shouting, seeing the smoke of her burning, saying, What is like to the great city? And they threw dust on their heads and were shouting, crying and mourning, saying, Woe, woe, the great city, in which all the ones having the boats in the sea were rich from the most valuable of her things. Because in 1 hour it was desolated. Be merry on her, heaven, and the holy ones, and the delegates, and the spokesmen, because the God judged your judgment against her. And one strong messenger lifted up a stone as of a great mill, and threw it into the sea, saying, So in a rush will Babylon the great city be thrown, and not ever might it still be found. And sound of harpists and musicians and flutists and trumpeters not ever might be heard in you still. And every craftsman of every craft not ever might be found in you still. And sound of mill not ever it was heard in you still. And light of lamp not ever might shine in you still. And voice of bridegroom and bride not ever might be heard in you still. Because your merchants were the great ones of the earth, because all the nations were deceived in your drugs, and in her the blood of spokesmen and holy ones was found, and of all the ones having been slaughtered on the earth. After these things I heard a great sound of a large crowd in the heavens, saying, Hallelujah, the deliverance and the splendor and the power of our God, because true and right are his judgments, because he judged the great prostitute who corrupted the earth in her sexual immorality, and he brought out right the blood of his slaves from her hand. And second, they have said, Hallelujah, and the smoke of her goes up into the ages of the ages. And the older men, the 24 and the 4 living ones, fell and they worshipped the God, the one sitting on the throne, saying, Amen, hallelujah. And sound from the throne came out, saying, Praise our God, all his slaves and the ones fearing him, the small and the great. And I heard a sound of a large crowd, and a sound of many waters, and a sound of strong thunders, saying, Hallelujah, because our Master the God, the all-strength, was King. Let us rejoice, and let us be glad, and let us give the splendor to him. Because the marriage of the Lamb came, and his woman prepared herself, and it was given to her that she might throw around herself bright, clean linen. For the linen are the right acts of the holy ones. And he says to me, Right fortunate the ones having been called into the dinner of the marriage of the Lamb. And he says to me, These true words are of the God. And I fell in front of his feet to worship him. And he says to me, Look not, I am co-slave of you and of your brothers, the ones having the testimony of Jesus. Worship to the God. For the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of speaking before